Okay, grab a seat. Grab a seat. Well, welcome everyone. My name's Chris and I work for the Perth Youth Gospel Partnership. When I'm not doing stuff for them, I'm doing stuff for Mundaring Church of Christ. Woohoo! Awesome. We here at the Perth Youth Gospel Partnership, we want to see healthy, growing, gospel-centered youth ministries right across WA. And so to that end, tonight we're thinking about some pretty heavy topics. We're thinking about sex and porn, and in particular, the impact that the hypersexualized images, stories, and messages that they have on us and the effect that they have on one another. We live in a world and in a culture that is sex-saturated, that we can't seem to escape from, and so we have to learn how to navigate it. The way tonight is going to work is that Daniel is going to speak to all of us. He's one of our speakers, and then we'll split into guys and girls, and that will give you a chance to ask some more questions and to hear some stuff that is specific to guys and girls. So our speakers tonight are Daniel Principe, hope I said that right, who travels around Australia and other parts of the world speaking about these topics. He works for an organisation called Collective Shout. And our second speaker is Sarah Bullard. She's from Callaroo Anglican Church, and she's the children's worker there, but has done a lot of stuff with youth in the past. Tonight is going to be pretty confronting for all of us that are here. We're talking about big and heavy topics that are so insidious that they have wormed their way into our hearts and into our lives. They have so changed our patterns of thinking and our patterns of behavior in ways that we might not even be aware of. See, when it comes to sexual images and sexual content, none of us have been able to keep ourselves pure. And we're lying to ourselves if we think that all this kind of sexual content around us isn't affecting us or changing us. No one in this room is unaffected by the sexual content that is just out there and in our faces. No one in this room has respected their own bodies or the bodies of others in the way that we should have respected them. Our desires have become tainted and corrupted and perverted. And so God says of us that we are enslaved by all kinds of passions and pleasures. We're pulled here and there by our slavery to our warped passions and pleasures and desires. But let me tell you about Jesus. In the Lord Jesus, we can find help and freedom and forgiveness. In Jesus, we can once again be holy in God's sight, without blemish and free from accusation. In Jesus, we have been washed and cleaned and made new. In Jesus, the stain of sin is washed away and we can start fresh. And tonight, that is our hope. Our hope and our prayer tonight is that we will be able to start fresh. You know, the power of porn and the power of sin seems overwhelming, but you have to know that Jesus is even stronger. In Jesus, we can learn to treat each other with the respect and the dignity that God has placed on each human being. And tonight, we're going to see how we don't respect each other when we treat people as objects of desire and objects of sex. But we're also going to learn how we can love and respect each other as people that are made and loved by God. So would you pray with me as we commit tonight to the Lord? Let's pray. Titus 3 says this: "At one time we too were foolish, disobedient, deceived, and enslaved by all kinds of passions and pleasures. We lived in malice and envy, being hated and hating one another. But when the kindness and love of God our Saviour appeared, he saved us, not because of the righteous things we had done, but because of his mercy. He saved us through the washing of rebirth and renewal by the Holy Spirit, whom he poured out on us generously through Jesus Christ our Saviour. Father God, our sex-saturated culture makes it very difficult to live for you. And so we pray that tonight we might learn what effect porn and sexual content has on us and on each other. Help us to learn how we might navigate these tricky and dangerous waters. And Father, I pray that you would rescue and save those of us here tonight who might be caught or trapped or addicted to porn. Please would you help all of us to know the saving power of Jesus and the new life and the renewal that we have in the Spirit. Father, please free us from guilt and shame. Please wash us clean, we pray. Amen. Well, I'm going to hand over to Daniel, who's going to take over. He'll introduce a bit more about himself, and over to him.
Thank you, Chris, and good evening to you all. How are we? It's quite an intro, wasn't it? Confronting. I say to my audiences all the time, I'm going to have probably the most confronting conversation that a school or church has ever sat in, but I do promise to try and say these things in the most gentle way possible. Tonight, we're actually taking a bit of a risk. I usually only address audiences with the sexes separated for some obvious reasons. And so in a sense, it's an act of hope, of goodwill, that here in a church, I'm hoping we can honor and respect each other, that we can listen deeply to one another and our experiences. I'm going to be sharing from about 21,000 different young people's experiences that I spoke to last year. And I'm hoping that here in a church is a place that we can actually embody something healthier, irrespective of where we are in our stories, where we are in our journeys. I hope that tonight is a place where we can get a closer glimpse of what it means to honor God and honor one another with our bodies, with our whole beings, that we could get a closer glimpse of what love truly is in a culture that distorts love, in a culture that corrupts our desires. And I'm going to walk us through that. I'm going to walk us through what I'm seeing every single day on the front lines of seeing the carnage of the sexual revolution. I see the heartache in young men and young women, in marriages, in relationships, and I'm going to diagnose the problem. I'm going to point to a hopeful, beautiful, dignifying, loving, cherishing future. And tonight, I actually have the privilege of pointing to the only hope that we have. Because usually I'll get cancelled if I talk about that middle bit. So I spend my days not speaking in churches. I speak usually in schools and to different media outlets about the problem of pornography. I don't always get a positive reception. I don't always get put with people who share my views. So tonight I'm hoping this can be a conversation that can encourage us all and to recognize the challenges that we're facing. I just want to acknowledge that I think young people are facing challenges that no other generation has faced. I think the introduction of smartphones, sexualized media, and all internet-enabled devices are having significant long-term consequences, and we're seeing the research of that. Tonight isn't to condemn anyone. Tonight's an invitation to say that there's a better, higher, more loving way to live and to use our bodies, our thoughts, and our desires for good, to create things that are beautiful, including our relationships. And I'm not talking romantically, I'm talking all of our relationships, our friendships with our parents, with our siblings, and with people of the same and opposite sex. And so that's my hope. I'm going to kick things off by asking you guys, and tonight's interactive. I know in church we usually do like one person talks, but that's not how I ever do a presentation, except for this morning at a school actually. The year 12 boys didn't want to talk, so I said, fine, I'll just talk at you guys. I'm happy to do that. That's not a problem. But I like this to be conversational. So, my friends, if you'll join with me, I hope tonight can be something that we really come away with, seeing a better glimpse of the culture around us. For those that have been in church, you've probably heard the word like apologetics from the Greek word apologia, right? And that's wonderful. I love apologetics. There's another word that we don't talk about too much, which is called categoria, which is to attack other people's ideas. I quite like doing that. I think there's a lot of bad ideas in the world. I think there's a lot of awful things, and I kind of like a fight, I have to admit. And so I spend my days attacking bad ideas. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to show how some of these ideas are harming each and every one of us. And I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I don't do this work as if I'm some angel on a cloud immune to everything I'm talking to you about. I'm going to share my own story, recognizing I don't know your stories in this space here. I recognize that I'm affected by porn culture, and I'll unpack what I mean when I say that. I'm managing myself, my desires as a man growing up and now living in a world that is hypersexualized. So I do this confessionally, and it's an invitation for myself and all of us to a higher way of living, empowered by the grace and love of Jesus, which is the part I am so thrilled I get to talk about a little bit in part tonight. So that's the intro. Long intro because we've got to set the scene. Bring your best selves. I do this work because I believe in the dignity of all people, especially young men who are 80% of my audiences, and to see them thrive in a culture that I think does not set them up for success, set them up for healthy relationships with themselves, with their mates, and with people of the opposite sex. So first question, young people, what phone did I have when I was in high school navigating puberty? Yeah, in year 10, I got my first phone. It was a Nokia 3310. So the amount of mischief I could get up to, the year 7 boys at Sacred Heart yesterday gave me a standing ovation for that. They thought that was pretty special. It's such a novelty to them. Makes me feel like a boomer. Most days I feel like a boomer. So the amount of mischief I could get up to was playing Snake on the back of a school bus, right? Yeah. You know, and I'm pretty straight, guys. I'm pretty straight when I say some of these things, so forgive me, okay? Like, whereas we're growing up in a world where every single day I'm dealing with young boys being catfished online. I'm dealing with young people being groomed to send naked images of themselves. I'm dealing with young people violating their boundaries or other people's boundaries to get what they want from them sexually. And a lot of this is mediated online. I even have heard stories of the most creative ways young people can find to give and exchange naked images of themselves online. And I can tell you now the predators are having a field day. With this, during COVID, there was a 364% increase of 11 and 12-year-olds sharing self-generated explicit material online. That's where we're at, friends, and that's what I mean when I say porn culture. This is everywhere, and it saturates our whole lives, and young people are navigating this. Young people are having to make decisions that no other generation has faced. Their parents haven't had to, their pastors, their teachers, and I feel for you guys. And so tonight, I'm hopefully going to shine a bit of a light on what you're navigating and then what we can do about it. These are just some of the issues we're going to touch on tonight. There's so many. And we'll intersect through all of them. And what we're going to do is we're going to ask this question in 100 different ways. How does popular culture or porn culture shape your views of men, women, sex, bodies, respect, consent, relationships? And as I said to a church last weekend in Melbourne, I asked this question routinely. Are your ideas about all these things that are pretty significant, like how we relate to our bodies, to our sexuality, to our desires, is going to play a huge part in how much we thrive in life? And are your ideas, are your attitudes shaped by Jesus' vision or pop culture's vision? And most of us are somewhere in between, right? And so that's the question we're going to ask, is where are we getting our attitudes? And what we're going to do now is a crash course in mainstream media. For those that are a little bit more conservative amongst us, please don't shoot the messenger. Okay, I didn't make these things. These are from 2 minutes in your family shopping centers and 2 minutes online, okay? So please don't tell your pastors that I'm corrupting the youth. The world is corrupting the youth. We're doing a thing called critical media literacy, and we're going to unpack this stuff critically, okay? We're not just passive consumers of what I'm showing you tonight. We're critical thinkers. So this first image is of my mate's son. He's at the shops riding the motorized cart, and you'll see what's in front of his face. And this is pretty common. This image isn't the downfall of Western civilization. My point here is to start a conversation that says, if you're that young boy or the young people in this room tonight, the most common way, the primary way you come to learn, especially about women, is about their bodies and that they don't wear much, they don't do much, they don't achieve much, they don't say much. They're usually put on display to be judged whether they're hot or not by the latest beauty standards, which will change tomorrow and change next week. And again, I'm not saying it's the only way, I'm saying it's the most common way that popular culture teaches us about women's value. What is this saying to young boys? But what is this saying to young girls? Because I am seeing every single day in schools, irrespective of the school, young girls placing more and more emphasis on how they look and wanting validation purely about their looks. Not their faith, not their creativity, not their poetry, not their athleticism, not their ability to make a difference in the world, not the fact that they're loyal and kind friends, but just purely emphasis on how they look. This is a Calvin Klein billboard that's 3 years old, and it sums up my whole presentation. The man on the right says, "I make money in my Calvins," and the woman who's in an upskirting image, which is illegal, says, "I seduce in my Calvins." I cannot give you a better indication on the one billboard the different ways we place value on men and women. And this is shaping us, it's educating us, it's teaching us things. These are t-shirts sold all across the country in surf skate shops in Big W. If I rocked up tonight to speak to you guys and I was wearing this t-shirt, what would it say about me? Yell it out, it's okay. Say it, it's okay. Thank you. This is simple and as a pervert, creep, weirdo, as a year 8 boy said to me yesterday, like total red flag alert. And I'm like, 100%. It's the only good thing about these t-shirts is the girls tell me, they're like, it acts as an early warning signal, like don't make eye contact, cross the road, like avoid this man because he's displaying his attitudes on his t-shirt. Thank you, friends. This is a young boy at the Lingerie Football League. This is before Women's AFL and Women's A-League. I haven't shown you a photo of the Lingerie Football League, but he's at a game on the Gold Coast. He's in the news. He hasn't done anything wrong, but the adults in his life have certainly failed him, bringing him to something like this. But whether you're this young boy going to the Lingerie Football League, what are we telling our culture when women have to sign contracts to agree to accidental nudity? But the whole idea of this is that they would take their clothes off each other on a sporting field. And I know about this because in my former life here in Perth, I used to work with elite athletes in AFL and rugby, and I was asked to be the head trainer for one of the women's teams. And I said no because I saw this as a mockery of women and a mockery of women's sport. But what are we teaching everybody by even allowing this in our culture? What is it saying? These are 2 advertisements for adult shops, strip clubs, and these photos weren't taken from the dodgy part of Brisbane. They were taken from the playground of Brisbane Boys Grammar School. So the boys go out to eat lunch, to kick the footy, to talk about their sex and respect class that they were in that morning, and this is on display above their school. And friends, I'm sure you're all smart enough to realize that education doesn't just happen where I'm standing or at the front of your classrooms or Sunday school. Education happens everywhere, at home, through our friends, locker room, TikTok, social media. Everything around us is shaping our attitudes. And how do you compete with this? And this is where the activists get it wrong because they usually get stuck into boys, but they don't want to address the cultural drivers, the role models shaping boys, the ideas that are saturating our culture that maybe mean that we aren't being able to form healthy enough relationships. This next image, forgive me, is in our family shopping malls. These are the least worst ads on display at this shop, Honey Burdette, owned by Playboy. These kids are lining up to have their photo taken with Santa, and on the way, you can see what's on display. This company is owned by Playboy. It's violated ad standards 70 times, and it's in family shopping malls. This image is for a actual patient, apparently. It's from Brisbane. Does anyone want to put their hand up and tell me what do they think is the product being sold here? Plastic surgery is my guess when I first saw this image. It's not plastic surgery. Lingerie? Yeah, good guess. It's not lingerie. It's not hair products. It's a sofa. It's not the couch. It's one of my favorite guesses. I get that all the time. What could it be? Shoes, good guess. Jewelry, no. Curling iron, come on girls, come on. You got to get this. What is it? Mascara's very close. It's a type of mascara's very close. Who said eyelashes? Give her a round of applause, fake eyelashes. So here's this woman, semi-naked, on all fours to sell fake eyelashes because, she's an actual patient. She was feeling pretty crook before she got her fake eyelashes, and now she's doing great. And again, we could have picked lots of different images where women are styled, hypersexualized to sell products you don't even realize. And lads, you agree with me. We would never see men styled in their underwear, draped on a couch to sell a fishing rod, an esky, or a barbecue. And I'm not saying we want to. It's not okay if we do it to men, but we do it so routinely to women, we've become desensitized. We don't even realize. My favorite answers of all time, would you like to hear them? My favorite guesses? Had a mum say hemorrhoid cream, had a dad say chiropractor. My favorite guess of all time was a 14-year-old boy in regional Queensland who said therapy. And I was like, I love that. I love that so much. I'm a big fan of therapy. I got to go see my therapist in Perth this week, and that's why I'm feeling so great today. It's a good time. So this was Sweatshirt Quicksilver 6-year-old boys. This is remote control. Control your woman, control her absolutely. Give me money, be a sex. Sold as a gag. Can you guys answer me 2 real quick questions, please? What does this say about women? Objects, yep. What else? No respect for them, yep. Used for sex, thank you. Great answers. They're slaves. They're there to do men's work for them, to cook, to clean, to be objectified. Can someone tell me, what does this say about men, though? That they're the boss, they're in charge, they dominate, they control, that they're incompetent because they need a woman to do the most basic things for them as well. Thanks, you guys. But I want you to get it. It's not about this one product, because as I say every single day, the ideas, the attitudes shaped in this gag are everywhere on Reddit, on memes, on locker room banter, and prevailing attitudes that are still sticking around about women's place and men's place over women and how men ought to treat women. And as I said to some Year 12 boys this morning, and this is what I think a lot about over the last few weeks, is I believe this to be true, and I'm happy for someone to prove me wrong. I tragically think that in mainstream Australian culture, the attitudes of this remote control have informed our vision of masculinity and sexuality, and not something healthier, more respectful, more decent, more virtuous. I stand by that, but that's the tragic reality, is I think we have all allowed our expectations of how we could show up to be informed more by this stuff than something decent and healthier. This was a back-to-school sale from Typo, the stationery shop. Again, what does Typo believe about young people if they're going to stock this? What was their marketing department thinking when they thought this is a great way to prepare young people to get back to school a couple of summers ago? We campaigned against it. You can see this is a news article from Perth Now. We got these products pulled down. But again, what kind of ideas is this reinforcing about women's bodies? Calling them dirty, putting them on the floor naked and saying they're dirty. Like, what is this teaching young women? But what is it teaching men about young women as well? It's horrific, but this is where our culture's at. This is as mainstream as it gets, friends. And as I said, I'm not showing you anything from the dark web. This is as mainstream as it gets. I want you to see that. And I just want to compare and contrast. Here's the men styled on GQ. Here's the women styled on GQ. This isn't about women's bodies or what women should or shouldn't wear. Please don't misunderstand me. These women have been styled passively. The men have been styled successfully. And this isn't about like my opinion of what I think about bikini photos. This is what the global research of 20 years, 135 studies says, that the more you consume images like this, the more you'll come to see women as less human than you. It's simple brain science. They've even done MRI scans on men. They're presented with objectified portrayals of women. They start to code women in their brains the same way they do items from their shed or house. It's just brain science. And we know through human history, when we start to see people as less human than us, all sorts of atrocities happen, all the way from Holocaust and slavery. But casually, not that I like to say it's casual, but every day things like racism and sexism and indifference to the suffering of others. Because let's be honest, you don't care if an object is suffering. You don't care if an object is in pain, because you've dehumanized them. And so this is my worry, my friends, is I've literally just shown you things from mainstream culture that teaches each and every one of us, if we are passive consumers of it, to see women as less human. What is the effect of that? My background is I'm a health professional. That I did a postgraduate in media and PR, and I worked as an advisor in politics and health in media. And I had a particular interest in propaganda. What we're talking about tonight is propaganda. And when we talk about pornography, I'm going to suggest to you guys that it is the most powerful form of propaganda that we've served up because of how it is able to teach us to dehumanize others. And what would this look like if we did this to men? What would it look like if we styled men and posed them like we do women? But what was the difference between those men? They were clothed. How are we tracking? Is this too mature for you guys? Is this all right? Would you like to continue having this conversation, or would you like to go get a nice guest speaker? Thoughts? Quiet? Pardon? I don't know. We can go find another nice one. I don't know. Someone to talk about rainbows and unicorns. I don't know. But yeah, body image and mental health. And I see the impacts every single day on young people. In 2015, 25% of young men were struggling with a body image issue in Australia. Now it's 83% of all young people. And no wonder, like your generation, and I know there's lots of generations in the room, but when I say that, I'm talking to the young pups. Like your generation is seeing more bodies and more naked bodies than ever before. Like you're comparing yourself to people online more than ever before. And what is the impact of that? Well, we're going to unpack that, but anxiety in teens is rising, especially suicidal ideation in 14 and 15-year-olds. I should flag that I do talk about confronting topics. I hope you guys already had a pre-brief on that. But in all seriousness, if anything I talk about now or in the rest of my conversation tonight brings up thoughts or feelings for you that you need to process, please speak to your leaders. Please reach out to me. Please make sure you get the care you need. Like for me, it's wanting to bring a light to these things to help us recognize if we are struggling or our friend is struggling so that they can get the support they need. I've worked in suicide prevention here in Western Australia in some of the most vulnerable communities, and the research is clear. By us talking about this, we normalize help-seeking behavior. We signal to our friends, to those in our community, that we will support them if they're struggling. We've seen depressive symptoms rise in young women, and this particular researcher, Jean Twenge, associates it with around 2008, 2009, a significant rise in mental health problems. Does anyone know what we introduced to the world at that time? Yeah. iPhones and social media. And so we're seeing the impact on young women. There's a frightening stat from the Journal of American Medical Association. That last line, if you can see it, is 10 to 14-year-old girls, and self-harm has risen 189% since 2008. And like for me, I don't actually pathologize anxiety or disliking yourself in this culture. Like I'm actually more shocked, like hear me now. I'm actually more shocked when young people love themselves and respect themselves, like because I think we've made it so hard for you guys, okay? Of course, I want you to get the support, the therapeutic support, the family support that you need if you're struggling, but I don't think we should pathologize it like we do, because when I look at the world around you guys that you're navigating, we've made it pretty hard for you guys to love and accept and respect yourselves because of how we've portrayed you. I mean, girls get this message very early on, and we joke about these sorts of things, and we contrast that to the messages boys receive from a young age. This is a book called My Beautiful Mummy that tells the 6-year-old daughter why mummy has had plastic surgery. What won't shock some of you this evening is it was written by a cosmetic surgeon. This is grooming. But we see these messages reinforced most noticeably in these kinds of games that young girls are playing, where you take a so-called ugly girl and turn her into Elsa from Frozen. What do you think this is doing to the body image issues of young girls playing plastic surgery games, doing this, learning that body parts are supposedly ugly or not okay or not good enough? And this is such a common theme. Is young girls saying, I wanted to get famous on TikTok, and I learned that if you post stuff showing your body, people will start liking it, and they will, but they're not the kind of people that we want liking the videos of young girls in our world. And this is just a reality, and unfortunately, so much of what I'm showing with you this evening reinforces this idea that young girls especially, their only value is in their bodies. young men are having these pressures too. Can I get a show of hands from the young men? How many of you have seen a Mike Ahern or Giga Chad meme in the last week? Just be honest with me. Yes, thank you. Let's just be honest. Thank you. Boys, tell me, what do you think it's like having non-stop memes of steroid-abusing bodies flashing through your screens every day? It's hilarious. What do you think's the impact, young blood? Makes you want to go to the gym? Does it make you feel okay with yourself? Yeah. Even though you could never get that big without steroids. Yeah, look, I'm all for people taking care of their bodies, nourishing their bodies, exercising. I love it. It keeps me mentally healthy. So does sleep, which is something that most young people don't see as a way to get healthy. Yeah, getting sleep. I mean, if you want to get big, young man, you got to sleep. You got to recover. But the reality is I meet young boys and young girls every single week across Australia who are struggling with their body image, young boys who are working out twice a day, young boys who are abusing steroids, young boys who are denying themselves meals because they feel like they'll never be big enough. One of my mates won men's best physique here in Australia, and him and I go and exercise together from time to time, and I ask him, what's it like? And he feels like he can never be big enough. And this guy looks like this. And he feels like he can never be big enough. And that worries me, and I say that out of love for him because he is a dear friend of mine, and I worry about when does it stop, when does it end, when does it enough, and how are young boys feeling, comparing themselves all the time. And young boys are feeling these pressures, and they tell me every single day in schools the different body image pressures that they're facing. But they're also facing stereotypes, not just about their bodies, but what it means to be a real man. Most of it is associated with never backing away from alcohol, from fighting, and from sex. Because that's how you prove that you're a man, that you're always up for a fight, for alcohol, and for sex, and for risk-taking behavior. And the reality is those men that more narrowly conform to those stereotypes aren't doing too well in our culture. They're more likely to struggle with poor mental health, to be destructive and harmful towards themselves or other people. And I think that for those older ones in the room today, we would all recognize this. We would know these particular types of people, these types of men who sadly have reduced themselves to these narrow ideas of masculinity, and means that for them, care and connection and community and love and friendship is off limits for them when they're actually struggling. When life's grief and pain and tragedy finds them, they isolate, they withdraw, and they soothe with other destructive things. And I see this time and time with boys who tell me that they're called weak if they're seen to be emotional. They're called all sorts of harmful words if they dare to show that they are human too. Boys, is this true? Yeah. What happens to a boy that cries at school? Made fun of. Tell me about it. Because I was in year 8 when I cried, because I had some pretty horrific things happening in my home life. And from that day on, I was called every single gay slur under the sun until probably my first or second year of uni. And these are the realities. I had 3 boys yesterday, after class yesterday, sticking around with tears in their eyes because they were decent, respectful young men who said they just hated coming to school because of the ridicule they were getting every single day for being decent. And this is what worries me, is if we don't have outlets, and for me, this is the hope of the local church, is surely this is a place where respectful, decent, kind, courageous, compassionate men can come, can grow, can flourish, because they're being shamed everywhere else. And I worry about what our culture will look like if toxic and predatory guys are celebrated in our culture, but those decent, respectful men are routinely shamed. So if you're bored, we're going to talk about sexuality and pornography. How's everybody tracking? Can I get a sense, do you guys think we need to talk about this given the world that you're growing up in? Yeah, cool. I think so too. I'm going to share my story. I was exposed to porn when I was 11 years of age on my home computer by an older family friend. I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't searching for it. My life was pretty simple. I went to primary school. I came home, played footy or cricket, ate lots of Italian food and went to bed. It was a great life. And yet this supernormal stimulus hijacked my natural development, my understanding of my body, about other people's bodies, about women's bodies, about what sex, pleasure, intimacy was, and it started to form me. It started to shape my ideas. The reality is kids are discovering this because every toy, every game, every Disney character has been turned into pornography. If they don't just stumble across it by accident, it'll find them. Can I get a show of hands? How many people have had a sex bot pop up into their Snapchat, TikTok gaming feeds? You're not in trouble. I know this happens to probably 70 to 80% of you, so let's just be honest about it. Yep, thank you very much. You're not in trouble, gang. I know this happens. Year 6 boys, usually 60% of them, and by the time we get to year 9 or 10, it's like 90% of boys have had sex bots dropping explicit content into their feeds. This is the world young people are navigating. Puberty and adolescence is hard enough without having a billion-dollar predatory industry dropping this stuff into your feeds. The average age of exposure now is 13, but it's 11 for young men. 10% of 9-year-olds have seen pornography. It's becoming more sexist, more violent, more racist, more degrading, and this is acting as the default educator for young people. And of course, the reason it's called a supernormal stimulus is because it spikes dopamine similar to drug taking does. It spikes dopamine 2 to 2.5 times the normal limits, and most young boys tell me they're looking at it because they're bored, sad, lonely, feeling rejected, feeling depressed, and they're not necessarily looking for porn, they're looking for this happy hit that dopamine gives them. And so this is the simplest way to access that because it's a click of a button away with no barriers. You can consume it anonymously and it doesn't cost you a thing. And so last Friday in Melbourne, I had a line of boys from their youth group telling me that they were consuming pornography, and I asked every single one of them, when are you most tempted to look at it, why are you looking at it? And they all said, I'm bored, I'm bored, I'm bored, I'm bored, I'm bored. What a tragedy. What a tragedy that in a world where there's so much that we could be up to, boys are bored. 20% of boys are watching pornography every single day. 1% of girls are watching pornography every single day. That's where we're at as a society. And the age of first exposure is getting younger with every passing minute. This won't surprise anybody. It's everywhere. This is an interesting finding. Boys consuming it believe they're more entitled to the bodies of other people, especially women. They think women are up for grabs anywhere, anytime, anyhow, which is the core message of pornography. Girls who are consuming it or forced to watch it or exposed to it believe they have to submit to boys' wishes. It grooms young women for abuse, for violation, to not respect themselves. This is the Australian research, and it can be summed up really, really simply. It's why I have a public service announcement on my social media saying don't date anybody who consumes porn. And again, that's not condemnation. That's just to say that there is a high risk of sexual violence if you're dating or married to somebody who is consuming pornography. This report says that if your mate's over here and you aren't consuming porn, but this guy and his mates over here are consuming porn, he's more likely to be sexually violent, to commit sexual assault, to be a bystander if someone else is assaulted, and to believe rape myths. Again, if just objectification can cause us to dehumanize another person, well, pornography does it on steroids. These are two young men who said they use it to answer everything and anything. It's like a drug, and Oliver says, I hate what it does to my mind and my perception of women. If this is anybody in this room, or if this is your friend, please come and speak to me afterwards. This person is clearly impacted in a significant way by pornography and needs help to reboot their minds. This is where we're at, friends. This is where it leads. Primary school children filmed and uploading sexualized content and worrying new trend. My colleagues and I have been reporting about this for the last decade. Finally, mainstream media is reporting about it and acknowledging that pornography is shaping and grooming this in younger and younger people. These are the stories from young people, and I'm going to share just a few of them. I just want to localize this. I may just talk to this, and perhaps you're aware of this. I'm hearing every single day that girls especially are having their bodies judged and compared to the bodies that are observed on Instagram or in pornography. I'm hearing every single day that boys are being exposed to pornography, being shown it by friends, older brothers, older friends. To show someone pornography is sexual harassment. It's a crime, and it's something that predators usually do to groom their victims. So keep that in mind. And the most common phenomenon in most schools, and 95% of boys admit to it, like they have every day this week, is making sexual moaning and groaning sounds. Can I ask everybody, is there moaning and groaning sounds happening at schools, and what percentage is it? Is it like 90% of boys, 95%? 60%? 65? I've never heard that. Most boys tell me flat out that it's 90 to 95%. They admit to it. Boys, tell me, what is it? Close to 100%. Exactly. I don't make this up. You guys tell me this yourselves. Did you guys know that it's sexual harassment? And do you guys know that you don't have to tolerate this? Like, it's actually a crime. I mean, if I was to rock up to my office, to a church, to a school on Monday and start moaning and groaning, like, what do you think would happen to me? Like, why do we not take this seriously enough? I heard from a year 7 girl just this week who said it makes me feel scared like something bad is about to happen. And fair enough. Fair enough. Like, I wouldn't tolerate that. I would hate that. As a grown man, I wouldn't allow that. And yet, so many people are rocking up to school. Boys tell me as well that they hate these sounds. You know something else that I was naive enough to stop talking about, friends? Rape jokes. I thought this was something that stopped. But this is a question that I ask every single day, a series of questions in schools. Have you heard a rape joke? Could you please put your hand up if you've heard a rape joke? Thank you. Could you keep your hand up if you've heard a rape joke at school or at church? Thank you. Put your hands down. Yeah. Most schools I go to, it's 100% of boys' hands, 100% of boys' hands to both of those questions. This is the world we're living in. I do this work because so many people I love and care about. Some of my closest male friends, some of my former girlfriends were sexually assaulted, sexually abused, and it's part of the reason I do this work, because whilst I can't ever empathize or know exactly what they've experienced, I've sat and listened to their stories, and I just can't fathom the callousness of a culture that would mock these sorts of things. And my hope in sharing this is to say for all of us, like, we shouldn't tolerate this. This is to absolutely violate the dignity of another person and to re-harm them. And I'm so worried in our culture that we're becoming more and more calloused, more and more cruel. We're losing that compassion. We're losing that care. Like I said, these stories are everywhere. I could talk about them for absolute days. What can we do about it? Well, don't put up with bad behavior, especially Christian girls. I know a lot of you are socialized to be really, really polite. Politeness isn't something I suffer from too much. I can be polite, but I'm not really polite when it comes to people doing things that are harmful, that are crimes, that are violating the dignity of other people. I don't tolerate that. I have a very low tolerance approach. But a lot of us are socialized to just be nice, to be polite. To the Christian boys in this room, I hope that you are set apart, that you are something very different from what I'm describing to you, which is very mainstream, very normative, right? I hope that you would be people that want to show up in your communities as safe, as respectful, that your mates know they can trust in you, that the women and girls know that you're safe, that you're not a creep, you're not that guy that they're whispering about at parties being like, he's got here, let's go to the other room. Like, you guys should be set apart. You should be known for your courage, for your decency, for your respect, and dare I say it, love. And for all of you here, do you know what is a tragic reality in my workshops with young men is we talk about what it is to be a good man, and you know what word never comes up? Is love or loving. What a tragedy. And do you know why? Because it's seen as weak. So they don't want to say it. They don't want to be associated with that. And what a tragedy. And that's where I'm hoping that this can be a place that we model something healthier, something better, something beautiful that we could actually be loving. And love looks like not tolerating things that hurt others and harm others. This is the most common thing I hear from young people, especially young women. We have the right to say no and not feel bad about it. It's a really powerful word. We need to get better at saying it, especially when people are doing things that we know violate our own consciences, our bodies, that don't make us feel safe, loved, and respected. Can I just put this out there for the young women? Like, if a guy is pressuring you to send nudes, to do certain sexual acts, and you don't want to, and then he stops talking to you because you say no and you set a boundary, that's a great outcome. Like, that's the trash taking itself out, and like, allow that, please, please, you know. And for you Christian men, I'm not talking about whether you're dating any girls, but like, make sure you love and care and cherish them so much that they're not even interested in guys that don't at least meet or like go above your standards. Like, we should be able to do friendship really well. We should be able to model something healthier for one another. Like, I want you guys and girls to be peacemakers, to look out for one another, to do friendship well, and to do dating well. so that we're not leaving people traumatized, which is what I see every single place I go. I see people traumatized from dating because we haven't honored and respected other people. And so this is my hope for you guys, to be able to do this differently. Friends, log off, honestly. Log off, touch grass, honestly. We're spending way too much time on social. I'm serious, go touch grass. Rub your face in it if you have to, but just get off your phone, get off the computer, okay? These are two young men who intervened. Most of the regrets that I hear from young men is that they didn't intervene. When a woman was being molested, groped, violated, harassed, that they knew this was happening at a party, at school, and they didn't intervene. Boys, could you get together and use the boy pack for good? Could you use it for good to disrupt some of this stuff? Like for me, like to be courageous in that, like these guys, or this young boy who got off his bus and intervened. The reality is you may not have to intervene on assault, but I hope you could disrupt things by saying, I don't get it, or what did you mean by that? Because the reality is, friends, you may hear horrible things once you leave this space tonight, go online, rock up to a sporting event tomorrow, go to a party on Saturday night, and you have to choose what you're going to participate in or not. That's why this is an absolute credit to Chris and the communities and leaders here to create a space like this, to actually think about these things ahead of schedule before you find yourself in these situations and how you're going to respond and how you're going to react. Old mate Billy, I never thought I'd have Billy in my slides, but she came out and said porn is a disgrace, and I got to just credit her for that. She copped so much backlash. This is a quote that pretty much says, I don't want to shame you guys for watching porn. I want you guys to recognize the dignity and the humanity of everybody, and that taking any delight or pleasure in another person's violation, degradation, dehumanization is just incompatible with how you want to show up in life. My whole message is I just want people to raise their standards for themselves, for their friends, for their relationships. Because I don't need to tell good, decent, courageous, kind young people to not do awful things that I see all the time, because it's just not compatible with who you are. And I truly believe this, like porn kills love. It really does. It's not just a fridge magnet. And I truly believe this, like real love wins. Most of us have settled for poorer, shallower counterfeits of love. And what we actually need is to actually embody and tell that story. And for me, this is the only place that we're going to have that. Our only hope is Jesus and in the local church to embody love. And love's not just a romantic thing about finding your person, finding the one. Love should be something we're committed to in all of our relationships. Like the local church, not marriage, is actually the place where God's called us to love fervently, to love one another and to be known by that. And so I would hope that you would start to recognize that love is more than just a feeling, but actually is to seek the good of the other, like to actually want good for another person. I'm from Collective Shout. This is my How to Quit. I'm going to send it to Chris, but if you guys would like to take a photo of this before you leave tonight, please take this with you. There is no silver bullet to quitting pornography. It took me 10 years until I heard a message like this when I was 20, 21. There is no silver bullet, but I would hope that you guys would do absolutely everything you can. I pray that people would come and speak to myself or other leaders if they're struggling. Every day I hear from young boys. I had a boy this morning come up to me in tears because he was looking at it every single day and didn't know what to do. Absolutely devastated. And girls, I recognize that it can be hard for you as well because it's seen as a male problem. Of course, it affects men more than you, but please know, like, you're not faulty, you're not irredeemable. We are all able to experience the love, grace, and redemption of Jesus. Like, we've all fallen short. I say this about me. I say this even about my friends. One of my friends tomorrow, he's becoming a priest actually in the Catholic Church, and him and I talk about sex a lot, right? And we both acknowledge, even though he's a virgin, and he will never have sex, we both acknowledge that the whole of our lives is dedicated to becoming more like Jesus and using every part of us to love like him. We've all fallen short of his vision, friends. And I just pray that you would understand that you would find grace to meet you wherever you're at, that you would want to see and embody and experience a love like Christ. For men, for you to lay your lives down for the women and girls in your life, not just those that you marry, but all of them, like all of them, in a culture that is teaching them to hate themselves, to lower their standards. Like, would you help them to feel safe, to feel secure, to feel honored, to feel cherished, not because she's your girlfriend, but because she's made in the image of God? And girls, my plea to you is, would you please support the decent, good guys? I'm not saying like build a statue and worship them for basic decency, okay? But like just be their friend, like, you know, like can we do that? And again, like, and make sure he's being legit, like he's not just being nice because he wants something, but like, you know, like if someone's shown that they are actually a decent, respectful guy who's an ally, who's there for you, like, can we actually form decent friendships and honor and respect one another? My friends, there is so much more I could say to you guys. I've tried to get through this as quickly as possible. I hope it's been beneficial. I recognize the content is heavy, and I recognize that there's just even more conversation still to be had. I'm happy to stick around all night till the morning if you need, if anybody wants to chat. Like there is no shortage to conversations that we could have and to support one another. Please know that like the fight is worth it. And fighting for your marriage, for your future family, like starts now. Like you're conforming now to Christ and to his ideas about bodies, about sex, about love, about desire, about intimacy. And that starts in singleness. That starts tonight for you if you're in a relationship. That starts tonight if you're preparing for marriage. Like we're all on that journey. And please go and find other people that do it well and allow them to love you well, to actually taste and see the love of Jesus embodied in his local church and his saints that are like him. Bless you all so much. Thank you so much for this privilege. Thank you for your bravery, for your respect, for your engagement tonight. Thank you so much. And lads, I look forward to chatting with you some more in this room. Thank you.
Okay. So what's going to happen is we got kind of a few minutes break, which is basically enough time for the girls to walk out those doors and kind of round the corner and upstairs. It's called the loft. So you've got a special room up there with Sarah, and the guys are going to stay here. And maybe if the guys could perhaps look at all those Mundaring outsiders, typical from the hills. They're my crew, so, you know, it's all good. But maybe if the guys can all come into the middle sections, that would be great. Yep, so move to those areas, and yep.